Hello, I'm Justin. That's Heather.
I'm Heather. We're going to talk about a lot of things that go wrong with PMOs and kind of our journey in experimenting with different processes and things like that. So let me just start off with what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about us first. Who are we and why should you care? And then we're going to talk about the PMO and why it's set up for failure. How do we get back to Agile? Agile has been a dirty word lately. People don't like to use it anymore. It's
depends who you talk to. Some people are like, yeah, Agile, that doesn't work. Or some people are like, Agile, yeah, we're Agile. And we're like, what do you mean? Well, Agile.
We'll explain. And we're going to talk about our fantastic voyage through process experiments, ROIs and roadmaps, something called Swagathon, and then finally the social experiment. So lots in store.
Made up.
So hello. How many people here are in a PMO or project management or program management or product management? This is awesome because this is for you guys. Are you all within software development or multiple things? We see software development other than software. Sweet. It'll apply to anybody, so it's all good. So I am the senior director of the PMO. And I started out in front-end development. I went into management and design. I am PMP certified. Anybody else here PMP? Woohoo! And also Myers-Briggs, MBTI certified. Anyone Myers-Briggs certified? So I'm so special. I really enjoy what the Myers-Briggs instrument brings to people management. And you can see I put our types up there because we're not shy about them. I am an introvert. Intuition, feeling, and judging. And if you notice, Justin is the complete opposite.
Yeah, I don't do any of those things. All the other ones. I do the other ones.
So a good balance, a good yin-yang. That's why we're good partners. That's why we're going to have fun today. And Justin, who are you?
So my name is Justin. I've worked at Gilt for about 5 years now. I lived in New York City my whole life. Come visit, great town. I've done a lot of different jobs. I've worked in customer service. I've worked in product management, product marketing. And it's kind of like, I think a lot of you might notice, like project management kind of comes into a lot of roles a lot of times, and I've always felt like that was the part I was good at, that was the part I enjoyed. I love bringing people together, I love motivating teams, and I finally got the opportunity to work at Gilt to actually be a project manager, a program manager, and work in a PMO, and I've helped build that from, well, I guess it was just me when I started, and then when Heather showed up, then it got serious, it turned into a real thing. And I kind of fell in love with doing that part of the job and just decided to dive into that even more. So that's how I got here.
So how many people here know what Gilt is? How many of you are customers? Oh, some hands went down. Be customers. So if you look up Gilt, you'll be surprised. It is covered thinly with gold leaf or paint, but it also is this cute little young pig in fashionable Gilt boots. But really, what do we do? We are an e-commerce company. We are one of the leaders in the flash space. So what we do is we have all of these luxury goods and we put them on our site for sale. The sales typically last like 3 days. We're also a really strong tech company in New York City. And you can check out our tech blog, tech.gilt.com, to see what we're up to and where we're speaking and all of our different philosophies and ways of life at Gilt. So let's get into the meat of it. Ready?
Yeah, go.
Our traditional PMO set up for failure.
I think so.
Just like this guy, this poor guy.
Just like Zoidberg. He's never going to get that drink. It goes over and over, he never gets it. It feels terrible for him.
So what happens? What are the responsibilities of traditional PMOs? Planning and road mapping, resource and capacity planning, implementing PM processes and standards.
These are all things that you have to do. These are things that people expect you to do, but I don't know if you necessarily can do them in a lot of cases with the information you have and with what you have at what you know at the time that you're trying to do them in a lot of cases.
All of these things are great and they're all important and they're all part of running a company, running a business. But what's the problem? So the problem that we found over and over again is that you're expected to plan and roadmap sometimes like months or even a year out. Like give me the roadmap for 2015. And in software engineering, that's really difficult because things change so often. And we're only given like maybe one sentence or one word, and then the PMO is held accountable to any prediction or anything that you say from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, to think you'll be able to know a year from now what the details of what projects you're going to be able to do. Like initiative, strategy, that's fine, but to be able to say that site redesign that we need, that we haven't started yet, that is really big, is going to be done on October 3rd. Like that's really, really hard to actually do and then If you say yes, then everyone will be like, well, then you're going to make it happen. You're the one accountable. And if it doesn't happen, well, it must have been something you did. It must not be the fact that nobody knew what sites we were redesigning, what was going into it, how far it had to reach, and what features were included. And just whatever everyone thought in their head that they've been wanting for the past few years, that'll definitely be in there.
And there isn't a lot of tolerance for planning either, or actually diving into what does that one sentence actually mean? And every person's going to hear that one word or one sentence and interpret that in a completely different way.
They just want to get started too, right? Everyone was like, okay, this is great, I'm excited, let's start building it. So planning can be hard because of that. At least, sorry, I'm going to do that like 3 more times. If you get it all the way now.
So the problem, you guys, this is kind of our job description. This is what we're expected to do. But the real problem is you can't predict the future. There is no magic crystal ball that I look into at my desk and say, oh, that site redesign, that's going to be out on October 15th.
Or that new competitor that we don't even know about, that doesn't even exist yet. Or that new watch that's going to come out that we now need to shift gears to rebuild our iOS app for.
If you're lucky, people get it. Okay, I get it. You can't predict the future. And then what happens after that? They think, oh, let's go Agile because that's going to be the answer to everything. We're gonna go Agile and we're gonna just be flexible and adapt to change. And the first thing they want to do is, because this is what they know, it's let's try out Scrum. Let's implement Scrum. What's the problem? You guys have you been doing this? Have you guys gone through an Agile implementation where you have to start a Scrum process and
using Scrum right now.
Wow, lots.
Yeah. We kind of use it. The parts we like.
So.
Oh, does she feel bad for him? I always feel bad for him on this slide.
Nothing changes though, because you've just implemented another process that has a lot of artifacts and a lot of, it's still strict. It's not very flexible at all. And the engineers start rebelling against the Scrum process. They're like, this is ridiculous. Why am I wasting my time at stand-up? Why am I doing all this sprint planning work? And then the PMO is still held accountable and called into question anyway. So
nobody's really happy. They're doing busy work.
It's a circle. It's just a circle. It's a trap. It's not the silver bullet. It's a trap. So what do we do? What's important?
That's it. Goodbye. Good night. Thank you.
We always go back to basics. Go back to basics, and there's really just a few key things to remember. Remember the triangle of truth.
It's so simple, but so powerful.
We didn't make it up. It's an actual thing.
Yeah,
the triangle of truth.
Before, right? Anybody seen the triangle of truth before?
Yeah.
So good. Don't forget about it.
Put it, hang it up somewhere, and if you're in a meeting, and you just throw it on the whiteboard, because people just forget. These are the only levers you can really control. What's the scope of what we're trying to do? How much time do we have to do it? What's the cost? Or in our case, it's mainly about how many engineers do we need. We talk about it in resources. And then what happens if you kind of mess up this triangle and it becomes out of balance is quality suffers. So whatever you start to deliver just ends up being total crap.
Yeah, you cut scope so much that you get this smashed triangle, and then the quality thing looks like a worm instead of a circle.
So if one thing in this triangle is fixed, we definitely have a deadline because it's in a contract with a partner that we're working with, then we can only really flex on the other two levers. Yeah. That's it. You can't have all of it. It just doesn't work.
And it's even, in reality too, that just throwing, doubling the size of your engineering team isn't going to make it go twice as fast either, right? If you're lucky, that could happen, but it seems really unlikely to me. So a lot of times, just knowing that too, to be like, well, sometimes resourcing or cost is pretty fixed as well, because we only have a month left to finish this, and by the time this person ramps up, we're behind, or we're late already. It usually comes into scope and deadline, right? That's where all it comes down to a lot of times. Can't add features without changing anything.
So the other thing we didn't invent is the cone of uncertainty.
Much better name.
So this is it's just going back to your basic truths, right? These are all things that you can talk about, draw on a whiteboard, and explain why you can't give a really good estimate right now as to when that thing's going to be done, because you're in this panic mode of discovery and design.
Notice the skulls and crossbones is a very alarming
Danger,
person.
danger.
He's so scared. He's scared because he's riding in the elevator, and we just found out about a project yesterday, and the CEO is in the elevator with him, and he's like, so that thing, when's that going to be done?
So what do you do?
What do you do?
we all want to do a really good job, right? We want to make our boss happy. We want to, get the project done. So all too often, we'll just give a guess. And we're often giving that guess, oh, October 20th, and that's horrible, bad, bad, bad.
It's like the first thing you want to do to like please everybody, you're screwing yourself, you're screwing the team that's going to have to deliver on it. You're either like setting them up for like weekends and late nights and whatever, or you're setting them up to feel like failures because they didn't get it done and it's late, because you don't know. You don't know what the features are, you don't know what's in everybody's head. You might not even know who you have. You don't know if someone's going on vacation. You don't know anything, really.
So the earlier you are in this, like the greater that estimate's just gonna be way wrong.
And that's when everyone wants to know. That's when they're excited about it. That's when it's new and interesting and they just came up with it. So that's when you get asked even more.
So what do you do when you're in that stage? Like, I like to give really big ranges. I'll give a whole season.
Things like that.
You saw it in the keynote, if you're the keynote today, or the product manager hops in at the end and deletes the year date and says soon.
And that was just a year. That's pretty big, right? In a year, sometime. Yeah.
And the further along you go, through discover, design, develop, deploy, the 4 Ds, then you can start making some more promises, right? You can start having a better sense. But you really don't know until it's done when it's actually going to be done. So keep refining the estimates, keep making that range smaller and smaller.
And the way to communicate this is to not just say, I don't know. Like, if you just like, when's it gonna be done? I don't know, oh my God, I don't know. You say, well, here's the things I need to figure out, right? I need to figure out what exactly are we doing. I need to figure out who's gonna be building it. I need to figure out what, here's all the other things that we're working on. We need to finish this thing off or whatever it is. There's all the things in your head that you're gonna need to figure out to actually be confident. So that's the answer I always give, right? Here's why. Here's why I can't tell you a date, right? That's what telling.
This is important.
That's what we mean.
Tell the truth. If you don't know, say what you're going to do to get the answer. If you don't know, say all the reasons why you don't know right now.
And what you're doing to answer those questions and what you're doing to figure those things out. That's when a PMO becomes valuable. Not when they just promise a date and try to kill everyone to get there or, manage to a date like that, but when they actually say, this is what's happening, here's all the things I'm taking into account, here's what's important for our company.
Because what's really valuable here, right? It's the person that knows what's going on, knows what they don't know, is trying to find the answers, and is giving it to you straight. Mm-hmm. Like, they can trust us to let them know exactly what's happening, what's going wrong, what we're trying to find out, and when we think it's really going to be done. Tell the truth. I don't know why this is so hard for like PMs especially, but it has been very hard. I see all too often people just promising dates and giving out things that are just not true. So core, key, tell the truth. And then finally, let's just go back to the manifesto. This is where Scrum go back to the core of this.
Comes from, right? This is kind of like everyone's trying, there's a lot of ways to do these things, but you want to look at what you are doing and say, which side of this am I on? And we underline the sides that we think are the sides you want to be on.
I'm sure many of you are familiar with the manifesto. It's like the lighthouse in the sea of the storm and the wind and the rain. Go back to this and just reassess your values and what's important to you. Stop thinking about process. Stop thinking about, am I following all of the tenets of Scrum? Are we doing these things? Are we really hitting the nail on making sure that we are collaborating and developing working software and responding to change? So what is the PMO at Gilt? How are we different? What do we do? First of all, we love costumes. We still get things done. We still do all of the, of course. So we still do all of the core things that traditional PMOs do. We also tackle a lot of the operational function of running the Gilt tech department. One of the things that I just did was reseat all of tech from our 5th floor in the building to the 4th floor. And why? Nobody better than the PMO knows the relationships between people, how teams operate, who likes to be near the window, who doesn't, because you are working with those people and you get to know them and you really figure out how the teams best collaborate, and their seating space is just one part of that.
Yeah, and sometimes that can seem like trivial, like, oh, just have someone pick seats for everyone or whatever, but if you think about how much time people spend next to those people that they sit next to, how much time they talk to them, you can really change the whole efficiency of your whole team and the teams. And who likes to be interrupted? Who's the one I'm on the end, right? I love to talk to people, but there's other people who want to be shielded inside so they can focus and concentrate. Who needs a quiet spot? Who wants to talk to people? all those kinds of things make a huge difference into how happy people are in their job.
We also manage the T&E budget for the department because that's also a part of it. It's how do we want to have fun as a team? So the PMO at Gilt, we do all the same things that other PMOs do, but we take on a lot more of making the teams happy, and we add a lot of value in helping each team explore and experiment with different ways to get things done. There is no one process at Gilt. Every team kind of finds their groove and figures out what works for them and what doesn't, and we're happy to keep what's working, and we're happy to throw out what doesn't work.
And we're always, we're involved in those teams as members of them. We embed ourselves in them, we sit with them, and we use the manifesto to guide the approaches that we kind of suggest or that we, back up or support based on what other teams came up. We're trying to always guide them towards that manifesto, whether we're explicit about it or not.
So we're going to take you through some of the journey that we've gone on in 3 different process types or frameworks. And you'll probably recognize some of it in what you're doing today. And it might also show you what's possible for like a next step for your
so these are kind of case studies of what we call our fantastic voyage, or how did we get to where we are today. And today is not a finishing point. It's just, hey, this is where we're at today. And we're going to kind of try to help you figure out, understand how we got there. We're certainly still evolving, and nothing is perfect, and we're kind of talking about the ideals here, right? Like these things can break down and change as well. So we're talking about ideally where do we want to be.
So this slide came up blank, but it's supposed to say everybody loves roadmaps.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
How many of you are currently planning a roadmap? Do you say the word roadmap a lot?
People always say, where's the roadmap? What's on the roadmap?
People,
Can I see the roadmap?
they love them. They love them because they're so pretty. It's like this beautiful thing that gives you this false sense of security, and like we're planning all this stuff out. And
they're going to be so good. There's a square there, so they're definitely going to be done. It's going to be great. So I mean, these are pretty. This is a simplified one, but like I've been at companies where you have this for the year, you have this for 3 years, you have this for 5 years, you have this for 3 months. We tried to do it for 3 months, but we'll get to that part. But I mean, this is a pretty typical kind of representation of something like that.
I actually hate the word roadmap because it's like, it just goes against that whole like telling the truth and what do you actually know right now. It's like, I don't know, just throwing it all together. So at this point, we're using JIRA in pretty the standard way. It's mainly issue tracking that we were doing at this point. We have evolved like how we use JIRA throughout each of these different process iterations too, so you'll kind of see how that grows over time.
It's pretty straightforward kind of dashboard there. So here's a problem with roadmaps, at least our experience with them. So we tried to do a 3-month roadmap if you start on the upper left hand there, and we said, this is great, we got it. Let's get some new project idea in there, right? Something comes up. The roadmap is done, and then someone's like, hey, what about this? This usually happens the week after we make the roadmap. If not sooner, or the day after, or like after the meeting's over.
And we're only doing 3 months. You figure, oh, it's just a quarter.
We'll be smart. We'll be smart. We won't do a year. We'll do 3 months. Easy, no problem. You can see where this is going, right? So someone has an idea. So then like, well, let's do a bunch of work to figure out how long it's going to take. What's the ROI? What's the return on investment? So that takes time to figure out. How much detail you're going to go into? You could spend weeks figuring that out, depending on what the project is. Usually, it wouldn't do too much because we didn't want to spend too much time on something that we might not be working on. Who can do it? Do we have the people? Who are the people we need? What are they working on? When's that project going to be over? Okay, great. If we wanted to put it in, how would we have to change the roadmap? Reprioritize, replan, do all that kind of stuff. Go to the exec team and be like, I know we showed you this roadmap last week, but we had this great idea, or maybe one of you had this great idea. This is what we'd have to do to get it done. And now they say yes or no, and now we have our 3-month roadmap again. So what you'll notice in this kind of cycle here is we're not working on anything. We're talking about stuff we're not working on.
We're just talking about stuff.
Talking about stuff we're not working on.
This isn't, I don't know, some of my slides are blank, but that's okay. It says change happens. That's really the point here, is like the minute you start planning something, it's like it's changed already. Yeah. The minute you build that beautiful roadmap, and it's so lovely, it's over. Well. It's only true for like a slice of time. Typically, as soon as you say, I'm done with it, and present it, then the whole thing changes. Yeah. So this is a time for all of you to kind of sit back and reflect.
Sometimes we let people just yell things out, but I think this room's too big for that. But what we try to think about here is like, so there are some good things about this, and there are some things that don't work well that we want to change. So think about it. I'm not going to give you much time.
Dun, 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 dun.
Here's what we think. We find ourselves on that less value side of the manifesto, if you remember it. Because like I said, we're spending so much time planning. talking about things that we weren't working on, while everybody has a project that they're working on and they're being distracted from it, right? We were documenting, we were setting ROIs, we were figuring out team allocations, all that, document. Maybe we did this so many times for projects that never started. It's very frustrating to do a lot of work and then not do a project. And then it's just process and tools and processes and tools. And you don't really feel like you're delivering value. You don't feel like you're helping teams accomplish anything. And that's what I want to do. I want to ship stuff. I'm not writing code, but I want to ship.
And if our primary motto is like get things done, like we're not getting anything done. We're just talking about stuff.
I don't want to get roadmaps done. I want to get features. I want to get projects done.
But we also recognize that the reason people love roadmaps is everybody wants this transparency. They want to have a sense of control. They want to say, okay, what is the order in which we're going to be doing this? And I think that's actually really valuable, and it's something that we have to figure out how to get better at.
You get that confidence, right? People have confidence. They see the roadmap and they're like, okay, I have a plan.
We still want to maintain that, right? It's not like everything's bad. It's like we recognize that that transparency is important. How do we get it to the people that we're working with? So we tried something called Swagathon.
Yeah,
And
don't worry if you haven't heard about that.
We made up this. You can imagine it stands for Scientific Wild Ass Guessathon because...
The athon is because it was really long.
But it had the same spirit of Agile teams. This has a little bit more of a Scrum bent to it, right? Where the whole team is working together, it's self-managing, dedicated cross-functional team, includes tech, product, business roles. It's like a mini startup. How do we create this sense of you are this autonomous team, this mini startup within a bigger company?
And look, they're all smiling, so something must have gone right.
The spirit is great.
Yeah.
They started to have 1 to 2 week sprints. They wanted to have some commitments of what we're going to try to do and then show the results of that at the end. So you can see it's kind of a little bit that step into Scrum, that step into Agile in which people start off like, oh, let's start implementing Scrum practices out of the gate.
Let's build MVPs, let's build prototypes, all that kind of stuff we started doing there because the teams were empowered to take the steps they thought they needed to get to where they needed to go.
It's a natural next step from road mapping. So here's the process. So it was actually a pretty heavy process.
Yeah. So we started with something called a one-pager, which we thought was a great idea, which is like, oh, make someone fill something out. You have an idea? Do some work.
Anyone in the company can do it.
You work in marketing, you work in finance, you work in creative, whatever. You have a good idea for Gilt? Fill out this one-pager. It doesn't take long. It takes about 20 minutes, right? Tell us why. Back it up a little bit, right? And then every week, every week we would get a bunch of people from tech together, what we call some members from tech exec, which is our executive team and project management and all that. We would have Swagathon for like an hour, and this person would come and present their one-pager, and then we talk about, how long would it take, how would we get it done, and all that.
We would just swag it, and what we found was like every swag ended up being 2 weeks. 2 weeks like the money pit. 2 weeks.
Yeah, just like people were really nervous about coming in. They were like, this is my chance to get this thing done. They felt like a lot of pressure.
Because, engineers can be a little intimidating, and if you are on the business side of the fence and you come in with your one-pager and you're excited and all of a sudden your ideas are kind of being torn apart a little bit and questioned, it's very intimidating. And it wasn't a fun meeting. There was a lot of arguments between product and tech. It wasn't the most joyous event.
It wasn't terrible.
But it didn't stop there.
There were jokes too. There was some laughter. I think we clapped at the end sometimes. So then whatever that thing was, it went into the backlog, and this was like a big company-wide backlog.
It was like a PMO list,
Really
centralized JIRA project called PMO, and it was just everything just went into that list.
Yeah. And then we would take what we learned in Swagathon and kind of what we thought, and then we would bring it to this thing called Product Council, which is another
meeting
of executives.
This is C-level execs.
Yeah, C-level executives. So we sit with them once a month, and we say, here's what the backlog looks like. Here's the things we're working on. It's kind of like, do you think this is good? Is there anything in the backlog or we might make a recommendation to say, we think we should pull this up from the backlog.
Typically, the C-level execs would just look at the list and reprioritize it and tell us what order was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that was that. And then if you got lucky, you would create a project team. If the project was actually able to go into this state called in-flight, then maybe you'd have the engineers. The other thing we were doing at this point is creating and disbanding teams on the fly. So this is totally just a list of projects. When that project was ready, who were the engineers we're going to pull together, and then when that project is over, they go back to what they were doing, and then wait for this next project. So there was the big question mark, would there be a team? Even if it was greenlit to say, yes, we want to work on this.
How many times do you think that happened? All the time? Every idea got done?
Are any of you like working in this kind of model where it's just like a project list and you're just trying to like crank through a project list and reprioritize just that list? You see some heads shaking, hands. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been there. We still do that sometimes.
And this backlog, do you have a never-ending backlog? And
Sometimes.
people like think, oh, it's on the backlog. What do they think? That it's going to happen, right? So we like to call this the era of false hope,
Yeah.
where the backlogs just got longer and longer and longer and longer, and people thought that something was getting done, and then
What I would hear all the time, because people would come to me and they would say, when are we going to do that? Like, well, this, that, tell them all kinds of things. They're like, well, but it's been on the backlog for a year, so shouldn't it be time yet? And I would think to myself, hey, the longer it's on the backlog, that's not good. That's not a sign of like,
I
yeah,
know.
we'll be doing this.
they thought it was a good sign. They were like, oh, that means it must be
My
coming
turn
up.
is coming up. It's not like a deli where you like take a number and you just do them in order, right? We're just going to always pick the best one, and if this wasn't the best one by now, it's got no chance. So that's why I say era of false hope, because it would always be like up and then down and then up, because it gets reprioritized every month, right?
We actually started to abuse JIRA a little bit at this point.
I'm kind of ashamed of this a little, but we show it.
So we have these states, right, in this PMO dashboard of in discovery, in the backlog, in flight, and then complete. And people will be able to look at it, but it was tough to get things to actually move through these different states.
We're
So
trying to bring that transparency from the roadmap to be like, hey, anyone can look at the backlog. You can see what we're working on. You can see what's coming up. You can see where everything is. You can find your thing and see where it is.
because as the PMO, we're supposed to provide a centralized visibility into all of the projects across the entire organization. And this was the way in which we were trying to do it with the JIRA. And we kind of made it a little complicated. This is one of our queries in JIRA. You can see people started to use all these kinds of crazy fixed versions. One of them is called Someone Else's Problem, which is my personal favorite.
That's the best one. This is the real query. This is the real one. This is how we formed that thing.
So I needed to see certain things, but not other things, and I didn't want to see certain statuses, and it was just kind of a mess. And I'm actually super excited for a JIRA portfolio because it might be the answer to this problem.
We've been trying to make JIRA do that kind of stuff for us for a long time, and we've come up with better ways than this to do it. But I mean, this is also kind of a testament to how flexible of a tool it is. Like, if you really want to go and do kind of stuff.
And we were doing it, right? So we didn't need anyone to help us. We were able to figure out how are we going to get done what we needed to get done.
We would just search knowledge bases and got to where we needed to be, right? And that's why JIRA's been the tool we've been using for such a long time, because we never found something we couldn't do, which was great.
So if you're in this kind of swagathon where I'm just getting lists of projects and trying to swag it and creating teams, and think about for a moment, reflect on your activities. What worked well? What doesn't?
I think I always give away all the answers with my complaining parts during like, and this happened, and everyone was upset about that.
So what did we learn, Justin?
Well, we're still trying to get onto that valued side of the manifesto, but we're really still not getting there, right? It's just like we're following this set plan, and we're focusing on executing the plan rather than, going to these meetings, like creating the decks for these meetings, making sure everyone's going to be there. Like, you're not really working on building stuff.
And creating teams on the fly was really hard.
Oh, man, that really sucks.
Especially as somebody, like I love people and I love the way people connect, and that's why I love doing all this crazy Myers-Briggs stuff, which I'm happy to talk about as well. But it's important, like when you start working with the team and you start to feel that gel and you're really driving, and then all of a sudden that team gets disbanded and you have to start those relationships over again. That was just not efficient. Everyone had to relearn each other and how they operated.
And
that was really hard.
PMO too, because we're constantly reshuffling our people onto different teams and working with different people. And if you've done project management, you know that all the tools and all the things are great, but the relationships you have with people are the way you get things done, right? And if we're constantly making you work with different people and shifting all those things around, it's not helping you either. So the people on my team are not being able to take advantage of those relationships either. What else did we do? Oh yeah, we talked about false hope because of the backlog. I complained about that a little bit. And so we were a little bit more flexible in that we didn't have the roadmap, but we had the backlog, and it was less of a plan out and more of like, what are we doing now? But we still felt like it wasn't, for all these reasons above, that we could do better.
There was a bigger story that was missing. There was something that still wasn't connecting. So we decided to take a step back and say, what if tech decided, we're in the tech department, by the way, we didn't mention that part. The PMO is in tech. So what if we decided what we were going to do? What if we decided what was best for Gilt? Scary. What happens and how would that work? And would people rally behind that? And would we be right? So we created a framework. It was called the social experiment because it really was a big question. How would people respond to that line of thinking? Just let tech figure it out. Let tech decide what projects are best. So how did we do it? This is the framework. So the social experiment starts out with a strategy. The strategy is typically decided on by the C-level executives. And this is just a big area of focus. What is important to Gilt for the next year?
These are really big, like grow international.
Huge, just like,
Global.
not even grow, like
Or
one
just
word,
do it.
international.
Whatever you want to do, it's something international. So many people there. Like mobile could be another one, things like that.
Merchandising. It's just big, but it's kind of just where do we want to focus? And then how do we break that down? So the next thing is initiatives. So initiatives really lay out what are we doing and what are we not doing.
And the not doing is so important, right? Because you come up with this really long list of initiatives that sound really great, like there might be an SEO one there, there might be, search or something else, right? And there's all good ideas. They all sound good, and we have to be really explicit about, okay, which ones are we funding, right? Which ones are we going to actually do and put teams around in that? And then the list of which ones we're not doing, so everyone can stop talking about them.
And even like what things are currently in progress that we want to kill off or stop doing, so we can pick up something new and head in this
Something
direction
valuable,
of the
right?
bigger strategy.
And this is so important because in all the other things that we're talking about, we're always talking about what else could we be doing, what else could we be doing. But in this one, we've identified those things and said we're not doing them. So stop setting up meetings about them, stop coming to my desk asking about it. We're not doing it right now.
The next piece is probably, I think it's the most important piece, answering why. Throughout these other two iterations of our process, we never asked the question why. Like, why is this important to the company? Why are we doing this? Why is this project on the list?
It wasn't, we're just getting the project to be like, you have to do this.
And we were like, okay, because we're good soldiers and we're going to march forth and get things
And
done.
there was probably a reason. Well, there definitely was a reason, right? And we did a lot of things that way, and we got to where we are today, starting from there. But the why is really empowering and helpful to the people who are doing it, right? If you're doing something and you don't know why would you care about it? I wouldn't care about it.
And it allows us to provide a framework for saying no. So we would set up those KPIs, and if something came our way and it didn't fall within that KPI that we were agreed to measure and track against, then we wouldn't do it. We just wouldn't even consider that project. Just
that
wouldn't get on
team,
the list.
Their responsibility is to move that KPI, and we can see if the KPI is going up, if it's going down, if it's staying flat. And it's up to the team to say, you have a good idea? Is it the best thing to make my KPI go up? I'm going to do it.
So we would create this list of strategies, and we would propose KPIs that we feel would be important. And then we would talk to the teams about, here's all the different things that we are trying to do. Who do we need? And we would let the teams select or have influence over what do they want to work on. We want to connect people to the work that they feel most passionate about. So, and the other way we started thinking about people, and I'll get into it on the next slide, is we think about them in terms of ingredients or their qualities. We don't think about them as far as titles. So if you're creating a team and it's a Scrum team, you need a Scrum Master, a product owner, you need some engineers. There's like a framework, and you have to have all these titles. I need a UX person, a designer.
QA person, I need all these titles.
We blew all of that up. We said, you know what? You're more than your title, much more than your job title. This is a little bit of an eye chart, and I'm going to call out some of them specifically.
Just to give you a sense of how many different ones there are. It's not all of them, but
We look at, once a team is together, we look at that team and we think about each person on that team and we think about what do they bring to the table. You're not just a program manager, you are contributing so much more. You're contributing your product vision. You are measuring KPIs. Maybe you're the coder too. We have many, many engineers at Gilt that also have a product mindset. So we don't have to fill in a team with all of these different titles. Fill them in with, like, what do they bring to the table?
And look at a team and say, what ingredients is it missing? All right, who has those ingredients, and who can we add to
Do you want me to go back? I saw some people wanting to take a picture. And some of them are, things that you need. You do need somebody on the team who can do wireframes. It doesn't have to be a UX person.
And it depends on what you're doing, too. They could be really complicated, they could not be. So the ingredients you need are kind of based on who's there on the team, what are you working on, and all that kind of stuff. So we don't need to bloat these teams with so many people. We can keep them lean, and everyone can feel like the thing that they're doing is the things that they want to do.
Again, it's about connecting you as an individual person with unique talents and skills to be able to contribute those unique talents and skills and bring that to your team and not be told, oh, that's not your job, you shouldn't be doing that. You could be really good at it.
We want people to blow that title out, right? And say, well, what else are you good at? What can you do? And where do you want to grow? Where's the opportunities for you? What are you good at? So coder is a really straightforward one, right?
We have some fun ones. We have cruise director. Because he's a great cruise director. Justin fills that ingredient on any team that he is working with. Makes things fun, creates a sense of team spirit. We work with the same people so much. Did you find your cruise director over there? We spend so much time with the people that we work with. If it's not fun.
When you're on a team that doesn't have someone like this, you know it.
It's a slog.
It's hard. You don't look forward to working, which is not good.
Motivator, who is creating that sense of urgency, but also maintaining a sustainable pace, right? We all want to get so much done, but somebody has to make sure that we're not burning out.
This comes from PMO a lot, right? This is a pretty core PMO responsibility. Not always, but I think if you're in that role, you're expected to be able to do something like that.
So we were really excited when the Agile tab came out because it just freed us from having to do all that project by project management and just start working with teams however they wanted to work. This is just the sample Scrum project that you can start up in the Agile tab, but we're
but it was just
using it as an example.
All the developers could just go here and look at this.
It's easy. We don't do a lot of customization to it. We kind of take it the way it is and let the teams use it however they want. So, what do you think works well with this? And what do you think some of our challenges are? Ponder for a moment.
Does it sound crazy?
Does it sound nuts?
We did all those things and then we start working, right?
Yeah.
So we did all that stuff.
There is no project list. The team just comes up with whatever work they feel is going to move the KPI.
That's the thing, right? The team doesn't get formed and get handed a list of projects.
No roadmaps.
They might have some suggestions, or there might be some ideas there, or whatever, but it's really up to the team to say. So for a long time, we didn't have search on our site. You could search Gilt for something, because we're it's a Flash site, people don't want that, they want to be inspired, they want this, and they do. But some people want a black dress, or want, something else, I don't know, jeans. And we never had search, and there was never any team to do it, and then we formed a team, and we gave them a KPI and stuff, and they said, we think having search on our site
It'll increase conversion.
Increase conversion, do all these things. If no one believed in it, they believed in it, they did it, and it's big for us. It's a big feature for us. It drives a lot of revenue, and it's just a great story of how putting this in the hands of the team who's really on the hook to do something.
So I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to cut Justin off.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The things that we've learned are how our work ties into a bigger story. Again, it's what are we doing, why are we doing it, and are you on the team working on something that you feel invested in? Because you have control, you have a say, you are deciding what that work is. We know that we're working on the things that matter the most because we're measuring it, and we can see the value in that. We can see the KPIs move. And if the KPI is not moving, we'll switch initiatives.
Yeah, you can keep the team together, right? So you don't have all of the mixing up of taking people apart, putting them together. You can say, look, the initiative you're working on, we all thought it was going to be good. We all thought the things you were doing were good. It's not helping, but there's all these other things we decided we weren't going to do. Let's try one of those other ones instead. Let's just change it up. Let's just move on to something else.
This was really difficult, and I think the next point is that what we want to get better at is collaboration. People still want that transparency, and they want to have a say. And we work with many different departments across the entire organization. So doing this social experiment did create a little bit of a rift in that there was kind of tech was deciding all of this stuff. How do the rest of the business leads get their voices heard and contribute to what matters? So we're still working on how do we connect better with other departments, and that's we find that it's awesome when we have people from other departments working with us.
Yeah, can we bring them into these teams? Can we make them part of the teams? Can we integrate? We don't want the thing where someone has an idea, they say, here you go.
Yeah, we don't want the handoff. Like, be a part of it.
Looking forward to the party and drinks when it's over.
Individuals' interactions is key. And then, again, something we're trying to get better at every day, responding to change. Change is just hard, right?
It's hard. Change is hard. That's why everyone always has all these things about how to change management and all these kinds of things, because it's really difficult.
People get anxious about it.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be like, it's a part of life.
Accept it. Whatever you know now is going to be different tomorrow. And just make sure you're set up in a way that's going to
Tell the truth.
Respond to that and constantly take those things into account.
And tell the truth. Don't lie.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
That's it.
And our beautiful flow down the moon.
Should we get out the stage now? Should we go?
What do we do? What do we do? I know there's a couple questions in there.
If
Cool.
anybody wants to ask questions, you can yell them, you can come up. We'll just hang out here too outside to talk to us. Sure.
There's,
Yeah, let's just do this. This is easier.
yeah.
So some examples of KPIs and kind of like how we use them and things like that, right?
So an international KPI is increasing the percentage of international revenue, just kind of as a whole.
From the whole, right? So there's a lot of ways you could go with that, right?
But that's it. That's kind of all the direction. And then the team will figure out, okay, well, how are we going to really move the needle on that international revenue? Maybe they want to localize the site. Maybe they want to try, a special 11/11 Singles Day event in China. Like maybe there's but the team would take that KPI and brainstorm as the team to figure out what's going to drive that, what's going to move the needle, and how do we get that to happen. Gilt is hard. Our sales start at noon on the East Coast. So
9 a.m. here, midnight in Australia,
Yeah.
I guess, right? Not that easy to shop at midnight. People do.
So do we change the sales start time? So that's how a team can take a KPI and then just come up with a number of different ways they want to move that. But you're giving the team that power, right? And they're going to be held accountable for that. And we review KPIs every 2 weeks with the teams, and we discuss what they're working on and why they think that that's going to move the needle. And that framework seems to work really well to get them connected to their work and really feel passionate about driving it forward. Ooh.
Oh, fun.
Do you know how if you will incorporate JIRA Portfolio into your PMO, or are you satisfied with your current JIRA workflow?
I want to use that.
We definitely want to,
Yeah.
we want to use JIRA Portfolio.
I'm going to go to the keynote to find out about it. It sounds like something that we do try to approximate now, and it sounds like something that's going to help us a lot.
We do a lot of things in Google spreadsheets right now, right? So we have a lot of our work execution in JIRA, but our strategy and planning around that strategy is done in a different system. It would be fantastic to have another tool rather than spreadsheets to try to manage that.
We've been trying to do for a long time. How big is your organization? How big is Gilt? It's like 1,000.
Gilt is over 1,000 employees. The tech department is over 100, with the majority of that being engineers, but there are a variety of different roles within tech.
We're in New York City, we're in Dublin, and we have some people remote on the West Coast as well. Do you feel that a PMO's productivity and efficiency is elevated in using Atlassian tools such as JIRA and Confluence?
So we've talked about this one because we saw this question in there early on. And we always are kind of tool agnostic because it is about people and the interactions of people. And it is about project management. The key thing is, are you managing expectations? Are you able to really make sure that people know what's happening, what's going on? You don't really need a tool to do that. You have to be a good people person. You have to gain the trust of all the people that you're working with. So while productivity and efficiency, it is elevated with tools because it makes things easier. Like the fact that we can just spin up new Agile boards now is
In like a minute.
yeah, it's key for us. But I think the most important part is it's people.
Yeah.
Ooh, another one. Look, is it possible to live in a world where a project is either feature-driven or date-driven and not both? This is a triangle of truth question.
Yeah.
What do you think the answer is?
Yeah.
Good, fast, cheap. Pick two.
Pick two, right? So you have to make a decision and you have to tell the truth, right? So yeah, I guess it's possible.
Oh, there's more. Look, they keep popping up. This is exciting. How do you use the Atlassian suite to provide the type of reporting, risk management, change management, dependency management, project accounting that is required from a PMO? We, as the PMO, decide what is really bringing value to what we do. And sometimes a lot of these things don't provide a lot of value for Gilt and our company and the way we work. So we're not really doing formal risk management, as a lot of PMs do. Change management, there is no formal change process implemented at Gilt. Dependency management, I think the thing that's awesome about Gilt is that the engineering teams are these mini startups. They can deploy right to production. We have like the ability to get things done very quickly without having to manage dependencies and releases.
There's a lot of trust there, right? Like
tons of
Gilt,
trust.
There's a lot of trust. Any engineer can deploy to production, right? There's no approval process for expenses, really. Like we just use your judgment.
So we're not, I guess it's kind of like we're not doing that PMO accounting work because we're spending so much time on the individuals and interactions, making sure that people understand where we're at, what we're doing, where we're going, who do we need for this, and driving that company strategy forward. We're much more in that get it done execution mode than we are on the reporting and account management style of stuff.
Because we don't have like an engineer that's 40% on this and 60% on that, right? We have teams that are dedicated to the initiative they're doing. So it simplifies things a little bit.
How is your PMO structured? Do you administer the JIRA projects and Confluence spaces? We don't actually have Confluence. Does your team include Scrum Master? Nope. How many teams do each of your program managers work with? So the PMO has 3 departments. I run the PMO, and Justin heads up the program management department. There's a second department called the business systems managers, kind of like business analysts. They partner a lot with our internal tools and internal business departments. And then the last one is tech evangelism. So our tech blog is actually run by somebody that reports into PMO. The JIRA projects, we do administer them. We can set them up, but we also have an internal support team that helps us with anything like upgrades or anything else that we need. The team doesn't include Scrum Master because it includes a variety of ingredients.
Who's going to be good at doing that?
No roles,
The
just
engineer,
ingredients.
The program manager, maybe it's the product manager, who knows? Whoever it is that's going to be good at it, let them do those things that a Scrum Master does.
There are over 20 teams, 20 initiative teams happening at Gilt at any given time, and the program managers generally work with about half of them. There's 13 people in the PMO total, and about 6 of them are program managers.
So we do about 2 teams per program manager. We usually find 1 is not enough, and 2 is just enough to make you feel like you're extremely busy, and like almost too busy, so 2 usually. That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's fun.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you.
Questions there? Enjoy the rest of the day.